So, really quick, what this video is, it is a bunch of what I call micro lessons. Micro lessons are things that a musician, or in this case musician, picks up and they add to their repertoire of practice. How they do something, not what they do. How they play this, how they get better at something, how they do new things. There's right and wrong ways to do it, and there's good and there's better ways. And hopefully I present something to people watching this video that they have not yet done. Even if there's only one thing in the whole video that you haven't done, that can drastically change your results with it'll drastically change your results with the guitar. So just think about doing, if you hear something that you haven't done or you maybe haven't thought about before, just take that one thing and implement it to your practice next time. And then just keep a record. I would write down an idea that you have, or maybe this video gives you an idea of something that you didn't even think about. Maybe I said something that triggered something in your mind. Say, oh, maybe I should do this instead of that to my practice, because everybody's practice is different because of what they're learning. Everyone at this school, though, a lot of stuff they play is metal and whatnot, so a lot of this plays into that and the technique building for that genre. So pick little things one at a time. Don't feel overwhelmed. It's going to be a lot of information, but it's great information because I've learned this stuff from other people, and it's taken me from times when I thought I could never get better, and I ended up being able to play things that I never thought that I could play when I first got started in guitar. So I hope that this elevates you to your next place in your guitar practice. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm always more than happy to help people over Skype or video, because I wish that I had that person who could hold my hand and take me to the next level when I was learning this stuff. It would have saved me so much time because I had to go out and find it myself. So if anyone out there wants help, just hit me up. I'm always down to help. So enjoy the video. Okay, the first lesson or point that I'd like to make is not to play a phrase that you're working on. Don't play it all the way through every single time. What you want to do is play it to a point at which you know you're likely to make a mistake. So you're going to implement this technique after you already know what it is you're going to play, after your hands already know where all the notes are. If you can't do that, then you don't really need to think about this too much. So basically, take the first sweep in Afterlife, for example. When I first started playing this, that's how I would practice it. I would just practice all the way through. I would go over and over and over again. And there were a lot of mistakes, and I couldn't progress past a certain amount, a certain BPM, right? I could barely even get past half speed at first, and I was like, what the hell am I doing wrong? The first thing that really pushed me out of there and got me to a higher BPM is to literally play the notes and stop on a certain note to make sure that all those notes up to that point are being played correctly. So, and it would be just a certain part of the phrase. If the phrase is this long, you're only taking about this much of it. And depending on how long the phrase is, of course. But in this case, that's a lot of notes. So I know that this note here, this D, was a lot of trouble for me back then. So what I would do is I would play four picks on the E string, and then just stop down, descend to that D, and I would just make sure that my pick is in the right place at that time, my hands were in sync, and that I played the note and it felt right in my hands while I did it. So instead of playing it, just practicing it to a metronome like this, instead of doing that over and over, what I'm going to do is something like this. You see how I keep going in, and of course I've already practiced this a billion times, so I'm going to progress quickly as I'm just playing this, I'm kind of just showing you the point rather. So And you take that, if you take your whole phrase and you just kind of move what you're focusing on, and so if you can start from here even. See, there was a little fuck up, so you gotta see what the hell went wrong there. And so on and so forth. You keep moving that window of the notes that of the phrase. You're moving the window of the notes of your phrase you're working on. As you do that, you're digging the ditch so much deeper with so much more refined focus rather than just... Okay, so hopefully you understand that. Okay, my second point is to practice just your picking and practice just your fretting. So if the phrase is this from the stage, so that phrase can easily be broken up into, it's just a major and a minor arpeggio shape, but basically the way you would do this is very simple. You just do it one at a time. Focus only on your fretting hand. So something like that. And as you do this, right off the bat, I'm feeling that this note here in my major arpeggio is a little weak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the first technique of what I just stated about looking at shortening the window of what you're playing and just focusing on that note. So I'm going from here and also brings up a couple points as I'm playing this. The next point is to make sure that you are totally relaxed, or as much relaxed as possible while you're playing, because if you're not relaxed, your body doesn't understand it as well as it needs to, and you won't be able to improve speed if you're not relaxed. It's just a weird concept about humans. Usually when you're trying to go fast, you try harder, you tense up your muscles, and you do whatever it is as hard as you can, and you put all your muscle into it. And what you got to do is you got to separate yourself from that frame of mind. It's something that humans are basically born with. When they think try harder, they try harder. But what you need to stop doing, or what you need to focus on, is when, say, your back or your forearm or your shoulders, if you're ever feeling like your shoulders are hunching up, your back, you're pulling the guitar in with your forearm to your body, anytime you're really grabbing the fretboard and you're grabbing the fretboard instead of angling your hand at a certain angle, there's so many things that prompt the human body to become tense. And like breathing, another thing to make sure you're doing when you're practicing is making sure you're breathing while you're practicing. So say we'll just go back to that same lesson, or the same exercise. So we're going here, and the only thing that the majority of my thoughts are going to be centered around, am I breathing while I'm doing this? So I'm just going to be playing it at a kind of a slow tempo, just for demonstration. And all I'm going to be doing is thinking about how I'm breathing. Inhale, exhale. And so that's what you're doing. You're just thinking about breathing while you're doing that, which may seem kind of weird because you should be thinking about playing guitar, but you are the one playing the guitar. You need to think about your inner workings while you're doing this. So always, always, always make sure that maybe even take like a 2-minute I would put 2 minutes on the clock during a warm-up and just play something, and while you're playing whatever it is, you're only focusing on your breathing while you're doing that, and it starts to work huge dividends later. Going back to the tensing up your muscles thing, what you want to do when you're playing something, and especially when you're playing stuff at high speeds, is you want to be able to play what it is and release the tension while you're playing it, which is, it's easier said than done, especially when you're going fast. Something to do would just be think about how, while you're getting tense, you got to be thinking about relaxing that part of your muscle. So if I feel that my hand is really working way too hard, my fretting hand, I'm just going to be thinking, how am I going to relieve this pressure? How can I use less muscles to achieve the same result? Do I need to be pushing down less on the fretboard? You know, there's so many different things that come to mind that affect how tense you get when you play. So you're working on those things to relieve tension. Going back to whatever it was I was talking about before. All right, the next topic, practice idea, is to exaggerate the difficulty of what you're playing. And what that means is, so say, let's go back to this lick again. That whole thing. So it's actually pretty easy for my fretting hand to play it here, right? At this part of the fretboard. But as I move it down, that same shape becomes harder and harder to play. So what it does is, when you change the place at which you play it, it forces your mind to really think harder about the placement of each hand, or the fingers rather. And when you do that, it's kind of like supercharging your brain to be able to hit the part that really needs to be hit. So, and this can be used for your fretting hand or your picking hand. So if you're doing this, move that same shape down here. And subsequently, instead of playing it all up here, and this is going to sound weird because this is different strings, but so this lick was across the highest 4 strings, move it to the lowest 4. That's going to be a lot harder to play. See, you have to really think about it. Whatever it was, and see, there's a lot of mistakes in there, but as you're having your mind play that, your brain starts to understand the different placings of your hand on each string, because if you get used to playing things all up high, you start to notice that you play these strings differently than you play these strings. And so that's one way to exaggerate the difficulty. All right, so this next topic is not less about the technique of the guitar, but actually how you approach your time management in your practices. So a way that you could do this is just to, pick an exercise and play through it, or pick one of the other technique things or one of the other points that I made earlier. But another way to think about this is to pick part of your technique, different parts of it. So say the fretting, the picking, or whatever, and you're going to isolate each one, play it for 40 seconds, and so this is called an interval timer. You can get one of these apps for free if you just look up interval timer. And so what you do is you say, I'm going to play this part of the exercise fretting only for 40 seconds, then I'm going to rest for 10 seconds, collect myself, breathe, do all that, relax. Then you attack the picking part next, and then relax for another 10. Then for 40 seconds you play them together. Then again you just repeat that. You're going to do fretting, then picking, and then then you just cycle those things. And as you do that, you're forcing your brain to wake the heck up and just do these different exercises instead of falling into the lazy autopilot mode. Because once you fall into autopilot mode, your results start to wane a little bit. Even though you could be getting good reps in, you might not be getting as good reps in. And you might not be able to you will push your boundaries further faster, I promise you that. So it'd just be like, again, do this for 40 seconds. And then you just focus on those mistakes. And then 40 seconds is up. Okay, rest, relax, then picking for 40 seconds. Of course, I'd probably do that to a metronome. I would know my top speed and all that stuff, which would bring me to my next point. This next piece is basically just a tip that you should be doing. Everybody should be doing. All musicians who want to progress past something, they keep record of the tempos at which they can play certain things. So if they can only play the riff at 80% speed, 81, 82, you have to know exactly what percentage or what BPM that all of the different licks you can play. And you have to, cleanly rather, the highest BPM that you can play something at cleanly, and keep that on file, because most musicians have a lot of different licks and they're not going to remember every single tempo that they have. So that should be written down somewhere in a notepad or on your computer. You should always have those. Like here, I'll pull mine up real quick. So this is just a little thing of my current things that I've been working on that are not up to speed yet. And I have them all kind of, the way that I list them, my first number is where I'm at currently. If there's a pipe like right here, that's on the left is what I've played it at. And then if I'm like currently doing an exercise, say I only made it up to 125 clean, that's where I'm going to start at during my next practice session. Just so it's a little reminder to like, okay, so we did something different there. Let's try and figure out what it is. And so, and I did sometimes, depending on which program I do BPM or percentages. And so like, or this one, for example, is the beginning of the stage arpeggios I could play at 125 BPM, but the ending was only 85 BPM. So the more specific you can get with this, the more you can target your weaknesses. And the more you target your weaknesses, or the more you play anything in general, the faster you're going to get at it. So you should know in your head which pieces are the slowest and pick on them first. That way, you can get them out of the way faster. The next tip is, it's a little life hack rather, coconut oil. Put this on your strings. Just take a tiny little bit. I already put it on, but basically I only put about like this much on, a little smidgen, and you can wipe it on the back as well, and this improves how well you slide. So if you have to do slide licks, it makes it way easier and less effort to play. So if you have something like slides like that, they become less like you're fighting the guitar, like it's just going. And I've been doing this for years on all my guitars. It's never worn them down. It's never messed up the back or anything like that. The paint job is all intact. Coconut oil. It's a cheap little hack. Try it. Put it on the strings and on the back. Cool. So, since you posted an arpeggio, a sweep picking arpeggio, and this is a response to that, let's focus on a couple sweep picking practicing techniques. One is to directionally, instead of, say this is the shape, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of picking these notes once, I'm going to pick some of them, I'm going to pick them 3 times, and I'm going to end there. So for example, And you can take this to different places. So if I'm just playing a descending minor arpeggio shape, you kind of get the point. You can kind of structure that however you want depending on your playing. When you find your weak points, you really want to, like, say I miss up this note a lot in the arpeggio, the B string. So a lot of times I focus there on my warm-up. I'll just go. And that just makes that note stand out in your mind more because you're thinking about what you have to do with it. And once, let's say you make up a little error, like you misplaced the finger or something, you really think about, okay, what that is that you need to fix. Another thing, so that focuses mainly on the picking rather than the fingering, mostly in that, because you're picking it multiple times. But say, so in a sweep picking arpeggio, a lot of times there's two notes on the same string, like for example, so like I'm not an expert on these shapes, but for example, this shape, there's this, right? This is that major third, and that. So what you want to do is to play that multiple times. So for example, see, told you I'm not an expert at these ones. And that helps you really build that muscle, because usually that's the hardest part of the shape. So even like for the shape that I was having. So you really emphasize that, whatever that is. And again, you want to make sure you're breathing right. You want to make sure your posture is straight, which mine was not there, so you need to fix that. You really just need to focus on those things. Yeah, so those are two little sweep picking hacks that you can add to your repertoire. The next thing that comes to mind is inside picking. Inside picking is the bane of my existence. It's given me so many extra practice hours on things that seem so simple. Inside pickings, if you're not aware, is going from one string on a downstroke. Say if you're playing down and your next note is on a lower string, and you have to go from down to up. So these are all inside picks, right? As opposed to a directional pick. That would be all directional picking because you're not going inside. Hopefully that makes sense. So I was having a lot of trouble just getting that down. Like it took me forever, like in backcountry. So this, inside pick, inside pick, inside pick, inside pick. Those are just giving me a lot of problems until I kind of had this, I don't remember if it was a video I saw or I just kind of told this to myself, and it helped my hands understand what to do. And so think about the strings, right? The strings are like this. If you're looking directly at the strings look like this, right? So imagine for a second if there was an extra string right below all the other strings, and you were trying to pick that string that's below and in between the strings. Instead of thinking about picking the E string and then the B string, think that there's a string that's a little bit lower and you're trying to pick that in between. And if you just think about doing that weird act, it suddenly becomes a little bit easier. It's easier for your mind to understand. So when inside picking, think about picking a string that's beneath those strings and see how your hand would automatically adjust to that, and go with that. Now, of course, this doesn't work when you're string skipping because you know. at the same time, so you might have to alter your mental language of what you tell yourself in that scenario. But when going from one string directly to the next string, just think about picking a string that's below it. Your hands might just naturally start to make sense with that. Which brings me to the next very important thing. And that is that you must tell yourself, when you find a mistake in your playing, you must understand it in English. In your native language, you must understand your mistake in English and be able to tell yourself in English how to fix it. And this happens, once you start doing this, it happens a lot faster and you can feel your way through it, right? But when you're learning about a new mistake that comes up in your playing, as it is never ending, you never stop making mistakes. As you do, you want to tell yourself, okay, on this arpeggio, my picking hand was too deep. I mean, I don't think there was any mistakes that time, but for example, you want to say something like, my picking was too deep in that scenario, so I need to raise my pick to this degree at this time, and I want to keep it there. And you got to think about that. And as you think about that sentence in your head, it becomes a feeling. And that is how you grow as a musician. You take this large concept, which is a sentence, and you fit it into this instantaneous thought feeling, and it just starts to happen. That's what musicians do. And that's why a lot of high-level musicians have a hard time at explaining how to play for, like, especially Sin. When you see him try to teach in the earlier videos, he doesn't know how to teach. It's because he's progressed at such a high level. He understands these advanced concepts, and he's done them so many millions of times, he feels it. That's why you hear musicians say, oh, you just got to feel your way through it. That's what they're doing. They've learned something in English and translated it into their hands and turned it into a feeling. So oftentimes, if you feel, or if you find out that you can't progress past a certain point, or maybe you're making a mistake over and over and over again, ask yourself, do I know what's going wrong here in English? Am I doing what I can to fix it in English? Hopefully that makes sense. And to take that a step further, have a simple way to remember that. For example, like, this is really stupid, but when I was first remembering my strings, way back lesson 1 or 2, whatever, E, A, D, G, B, E, right? So little simple algorithm, not algorithms, but I forget the word, but E, A, D, G, B, E, Eid Gebe. That's how I remember that. Can't remember the strings? All right, Eid Gebe, E, A, D, G, B, E. And then some people say like elephants all die, blah, 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 or whatever. Just find a way in English to make yourself remember that and use the shortest amount of precise words possible. That helps your playing a lot. You'd be surprised. The next practice, I don't know if you call this a method or just the right way to practice. So say you got a phrase like, not a phrase, the whole solo like this, right after, like. So you have that. There's a lot of position shifts in here. So I guess that's what this goes with, position shifts. When there is a position shift, you want to focus at least a portion of your practice time with the first note of, this is kind of complicated, but so this would be the first position, right? And then you might, like a beginner or whatever, might think to just practice the second arpeggio in that sequence. Just say, okay, I'm going to start here, right? I'm gonna start practicing there. But that's not how you play it, because what you're gonna do is your hand has to think about moving there first before it can play it. So what you want to do is you want to find where your hand ends on the phrase before. So, and then, so when you're playing it to a metronome, and let's slow it down just for the lesson. So you practice just that transition between arpeggios, because that's oftentimes where most of the mistakes occurred. So transition. Because when I first, hopefully that makes sense. You got to practice the note of wherever it's coming from. You don't just, okay, I'm going to turn on the metronome and practice this arpeggio shape. Which is good, it helps you understand the arpeggio, but to understand how to play it in context, that's the big thing. Once you practice the transitions together in your actual practice sessions, that's what separates a lot of guitar, the novice guitars from the elite guitars. And that's where you see a lot of mistakes, or at least where I see them in YouTube videos, is when kids, or anybody really, doesn't have to be a kid, but somebody that their transitions are off, it's because they don't actually practice the transition. So, all right, this next lesson deals with speed picking or speed tremolo picking. Or whatever it is, just anything on one string. And there's, believe it or not, there's a lot of stuff that goes into making that successful, as you probably know. But the key concept, again, going back to English, right? The key concept to understanding this is to create as little space across the string as possible. Don't think about picking faster. Think about picking and moving your pick less while achieving the same sound. So one thing that really helped me is, this is the string, right? At a certain tempo, I don't know what it is, but basically when you have your pick and you're not thinking about going as fast as you can over it, what you're going to think about doing is stay in contact with it. Stay in contact with the string, whichever one it is. And the second you start to come off of the string because you're going too fast and your muscles are tensing up, or you lose that technique, you just want to think about, all you do, don't play faster, just move less. Just keep in contact with the string. Keep in contact with the string. So what that sounds like slow, of course, is going to sound weird. But once you get faster, and of course past certain tempos, your hand will start to do different things. You really just want to find a way that your hand can relax, and keep all the lower strings muted, and just play the highest string. Make sure all those are muted. And that whole time, you're just trying to think to yourself, okay, I'm staying in contact with the string. I'm staying in contact with the string. And building off of that, the next lesson, or the next little micro concept, would be the best economical motion for your hand to do that without tensing up your whole elbow and doing that, which is appropriate at sometimes depending on where you play or whatever. But the best method to doing this is to think about washing your hands, right? You wash your hands, and then usually to get the water off, you do this, right? Like rinse and then kind of do this. Well, that is the motion at which it's a way for your muscles to understand how to play fast. Don't think about going up down with your wrists. If you do that, I wouldn't recommend that, because that's hard to do at high speeds. But your hand can really do that flicking motion at a high speed with a low tension. Low amounts of tension happen at that level, or at how you're doing that. So just find this part of my hand mutes the string when I'm doing this, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just doing that while at the same time keeping in contact with the string, instead of tensing up and just thinking about going as fast as you can. So yeah, hope that makes sense. All right, so this next idea is more of a concept rather than a practice technique. The concept is how what is the best way to bridge the gap in your playing from average level to a high level in speed, basically. So if you're able to play this whatever, you're just playing it at a low speed or a moderate speed, but a lot of times in people's playing, they reach a plateau and they can't really figure out how to get faster, because usually what we think is the typical play something slow a million times, build up speed, build up speed, build up speed, build up speed. But that actually is not the fastest way to achieve a good, the highest speed, the up to speed, should you say. So what you need to do is you need to get your mind and your body to understand how it feels to play something at a high level, which probably sounds like an impossibility depending on what you're trying to play if someone's at a novice level. But what you have to do is understand the whole road of what it's going to take to get wherever it is you're trying to go. So for example, I thought this was totally impossible to play. If you would have said you could play this, the Afterlife solo, or play this arpeggio at 110 beats per minute, 32-second notes, I would have thought that was impossible. But Sinister Gates and everybody else, a lot of guitarists can do that, you know. It's probably not up to speed, but you know. This was, for me, this was the huge breaking point in my playing, my huge breakthrough. And that was because if you would have told me when I was a novice that I'd be able to do that at will, I would have been like, how the fuck does anyone play that fucking fast, right? How is that at all possible? Well, here are some shortcuts. And by shortcuts, I don't mean sacrificing technique. Never, ever, ever sacrifice technique. But what you have to do sometimes is you have to take a shortcut to shorten the time it takes you from getting to point A to point B. So for example, the first thing that you would have to look at is how fast do you really have to play that at, let's play that up to speed, 110 BPM. Let's see if I can pull it off. I haven't really warmed up that fast, but let's see if I can do it. So here's what I mean. If I was trying to learn something and learn this arpeggio now at 110 beats per minute, here's how I would do it. I would first start with the picking. I know that it's gonna be that there's 9 notes in there, which is perfect for, it's 8 beats per click, right? So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is, it's pretty simple to understand it that way, right? You know, we're not talking about speed yet. We're just thinking about how fast you're gonna be able to play those notes. So how fast is that? Can my picking hand play that? We're not worrying about fretting right now. Let's see if we can do it. So here's how I do it. And that's so when you break it down that way, it's actually pretty simple. If I were to go back in time and tell myself that, I would have saved so much practice time just because I would have understood it and be able to play it just that quick. And it really isn't that fast. Like I could probably go faster than that. Let's bump it up to 125, right? Now what you want to do is you want to take that and really hone in. If your playing is kind of already at a moderate level, you want to focus on each little pick, right? But so for example, I'll focus on this one because usually the inside pick in a suite for me is harder. Yeah, I got it. So that's actually pretty simple. But then the harder part comes, which is of course the fingering. All right. So you just need to see, like let's bring it back way down, right? Let's bring it down to 75, which is that's roughly, I don't know, 60% of what I was just doing. So as you're doing that, as you're learning the shape, let's say you're not like a super fast person at an arpeggio yet. Well, you just need to find those little breaking points at which the technique breaks, as stated before, and so you get what it looks like to feel that speed. So, and again, you got to apply this to the different parts of technique. Maybe the 110 or the tremolo picking is what would give a person trouble at a certain speed. So like going back to 110 BPM. Again, I haven't warmed up this. Well, let's see how it goes. Just be able to play it as it will. So yeah, that's, you know, all the past lessons that I was just talking about, a lot of that I just implemented in there. Several of them, the breathing, the posture, staying on beats, playing up to a certain note. If I can play it right. Yeah. That's an advanced concept of you want to reach out to wherever it is that you're trying to play and actually try and attempt to feel what it is that you're playing it at a certain speed. And wherever your mind and your hands start to get confused, that's the part that you focus on first. And the more that you focus on the part in the future, like that of where you need to be, you're gonna your path isn't gonna go like if it was a graph, like an improvement graph, right? Like this is my progress. Your progress wouldn't go like this, it would just go like more up. Just because you're focusing just on the more things that give you trouble, as stated before. So hopefully that makes sense. So the next thing is, once you get familiar with each of these little micro lessons, or you come up with your own micro lessons, figure out how to work them together to benefit each other. And what I mean by that, as an example, let's say you can play something at 100 beats a minute, right? Play it at 100 beats and you can play it comfortably. Your target is, say, 135, and so you can kind of play pieces of it at 110, but you can't play the whole thing at 100, right? You can play it comfortably, the whole thing at less than 100. So let's just pretend that this is 100 BPM, right? So that's 100 BPM, and this is 110. Or wherever you start to make those little mistakes. So what you do is you first find those little mistakes, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that little phrase there, right? And I'm gonna play it for, say, 40 seconds straight. Going back to, I'm gonna be combining the interval technique that I talked about earlier. I'm gonna be just playing that at 110 beats for 40 seconds, just that one piece of it. I'm gonna fight the urge to keep going because I know that that's where I really need to work on. I've obtained my knowledge in English that I need to implement, and I'm going to just focus on that little piece. And I'm gonna do it 110 beats a minute. I'm gonna set my interval timer. I'm gonna do 40 seconds of that. Then I'm going to, once that 40 seconds is up, 10 seconds of rest, reset the metronome really quick to 80 beats. And I'm still thinking about that little phrase, but I'm gonna be playing the whole thing. So you're focusing on that same piece, but your hands are getting the repetitions of all of it put together, because if you only practice a piece, that's what you're gonna get good at. But if you start to do that and then do the whole thing, do the whole thing, you start to bridge that gap. You know, it'd be like really working out your bicep and then doing, because maybe that's your weakest part of your arm or something, I don't know. And then you do bench presses or you do an exercise that involves your bicep and other muscles, and you do it at a lesser weight. So you do 110 of this, and then you do 80 beats per minute for 40 seconds this. And you do that kind of in a marathon way. You do it without stopping. You do it at a pace at which you don't stop, and you just do it over and over and over and over and over again, and there's very little mistakes. What that does, doing that over and over and over and over and over again, it builds the trail in your mind, the pathway in your mind to doing it correctly. Because if you do it a billion times, you're going to be better than if you did it only a million times. Or at least you're going to be better at doing it the way in which you practiced it. So there. Combining different methods at will. All right, so far I kind of broke down practicing into two big categories, which would be fretting hand and your picking hand, right? So another thing to do during your practice sessions is, and again, most of these are, you don't do your entire hour or hour and a half or however long you practice. You don't focus the whole practice time on these things. You just take a chunk to really carve out this thing that you need to either improve or build upon. You focus on the basic techniques that you're having difficulty with or you want to get better, whatever it is. So for example, I'm going to be thinking about having just the right amount of pick depth on my pick, whether it's 2 out or 2 in. I'm just going to be thinking about that while I'm playing a sequence. And even if I make a mistake in my fretting hand, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm only going to be concerned with this. I'm focusing on this while I'm playing the whole thing. And if you get really comfortable with that, or after a certain amount of time, say like a minute or two, then you switch your focus to making sure that you are using the tip of your finger rather than the print of your finger, and you're only focusing on doing that during whatever it is you're practicing. I'm thinking about the tip. I'm thinking about the tip. The tip only. Just the tip. And again, I'm not thinking about doing picking at that point. I'm not stopping to correct picking at that point, rather. I'm stopping to correct fingerprint mistakes. Then I might rotate my focus again to tension. Are my hands tense while I'm playing this? So I'm thinking about just using the least amount of force possible. No part of me was really getting tense there, and I'm pretty sure I was breathing. I wasn't focusing on my breathing, but I didn't start to get tense, and that's a sign that your breathing is usually working in hindsight. So yeah, you find these little basic techniques you've probably heard a million times, and you just think about only making sure that works, because a lot of times you just have that one note in a phrase that, oh, you print that note instead of point it, or you know what I mean? You just do, that's the part where you mess up. So I'm just thinking about doing that. And so as you do that, you just start to attack whatever it is, you're attacking it from all different angles, and instead of just attacking it from one angle and you're neglecting the other 3 or 4 or 5 or however many techniques it takes to make a certain sound. So yeah, rotating your focus of what you're trying to play. Next idea comes with how you choose what to practice. Typically, the human mind, well, not typically, always, all the human minds, the way that they work, they have the most attention, the most good sessions of whatever it is they're trying to improve on when at the start of a practice session, right? Because that's when you're fresh, that's when you're ready to go, it's when your hands haven't been working for, hours and they're ready to go. So you want to pack your hardest practice items first, generally. So anything that's really hard for you, or you're at a level where it's like it's taking all of your attention just to make this thing work, you want to put that first. And usually what I do, at least to help myself flow, and to actually have myself enjoy my practice, because that's part of it too, is getting yourself to enjoy your practices, is I'll do something hard for say 15 minutes. I'll only practice that one exercise with all of these different micro lessons that I kind of described. I'll practice that one arpeggio or whatever it is for 15 minutes, and then I'll go 5 minutes of something very easy and more enjoyable to play. So I might do the Afterlife arpeggio first for 15 minutes, and then I'll do Gunslinger for 5 minutes. Just like, that's really easy to do, right? So you want to stagger your practice items to have maximum effectiveness. The items that you play first will always have more benefit and more experience points earned if you do them at the start rather at the finish, when you're already tired and your hands can't really work at their highest level. So that's how I would think about organizing my practice schedule. Hard, easy, moderate, medium, easy, and then whatever. You don't have to get so fucking meticulous with it, but the idea is to do the harder things first. Generally, you'll see better results that way. All right, so this is about not just practicing, or not thinking about one practice session, and thinking about how you're going to approach the whole day. Let's say you have 10 hours to potentially play the guitar today, okay? So in my experience, not saying I know everything, but this is what's been working for me the best. I start with the hardest practice stuff first in my first session, and my first session will never go past 90 minutes. The human mind's ability to focus wanes drastically after 90 minutes of whatever it is you're doing. It's been studied. I've taken personal development courses where they say the same thing. I've asked an Olympic gold medalist how long he practices. He says he never practices for more than 90 minutes at a time. Keyword, at a time. So when you practice, don't ever just zone out for 3 hours straight. You're not doing yourself any favors by doing that. You could probably have a better practice total. You have more experience points, more good experience points, if you break up your practicing more of whatever it is you're doing by just a little bit. So do 90 minutes, take 15 off. Do another 90 minutes, take 15 off. Are you always going to be able to do 90 minutes? No, but probably you should not be going past 90 minutes. If you are, I would challenge you to stop after that time and then start again later. So piggybacking off of that idea, that concept, your first session in an ideal day, say you have 10 hours to practice, potentially 90 minutes, start with your hardest stuff first. Hard, moderate, hard, easy, medium, easy, fun. Like that's how I typically do it, because you're just not going to be able to play the highest level that you can currently play at. You're not going to be able to sustain that for 5 hours. It's impossible, So what you do is you stagger, like I said, you treat that first practice session that way. Then after that is what I would call easy time or TV time, where you pick something that's hard for you and you dial it down to about 80%. So 80% or even 70% of your max level, and you just play that over and over, because you won't get tired at that 70% level. You can literally just do this all day, or I can do this all day. And you're going to be focused less when you do that. But it's okay, because you already spent your hard-earned, how do you say this? You've already used up the best part of your practice sessions at first, because you used up your energy, right? Your best energy first. And once the lick itself lasts 15 seconds, right? 15 seconds and it's over. But you're doing that 15-second riff for a minute or even 2 minutes at a time, maybe, depending on how fast you're doing it. And if you do that over and over and over again, take a minute break, 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, 2 minutes on, 1 minute off of 70 or 80%, you really work your hands differently. You work them for a marathon rather than the sprint that it is. And it helps build your technique that much faster. You're putting in the hours, and you'll amaze yourself at how much better and more fluid your hands can do what you want them to do without as much time needed to warm up. The next day, if you did do the 70 or 80% just over and over and over and over and over again until you're sick and tired of hearing that riff, the next day you will just be so much more unconscious about, your hands will be unconscious about what they have to do, which is a good thing. You want your hands to be able to just do what they do without thinking about it. That's the goal. Can you get there with everything? No, but you can make it easier to do it by putting in billions of reps. So ask yourself, are you doing billions of reps? Which we're not. That's an overstatement, but I'm just saying, for dramatic effect. Are you doing them more and then more and more every day? You should be doing, if you want to progress at something and get at a high level, you got to be doing it more every day. More every day. More than the last day. More than the last day. That's how you get great at something. All right, so this next concept applies to anybody who wants to be more than just a bedroom guitarist recording videos for YouTube. You must learn how to perform and look at ease and look exciting and entertaining while you play, because most people want to play in a band or they want to play live at some point. And you got to learn, one, how to play on your feet, and two, how to not just look like a stiff the whole time you're playing, and how to not just stare at the guitar the whole time while you're playing. And that takes a lot of practice. One kind of fun thing you can do is to record yourself playing your guitar how you would like to play it to a song. So play a song in the background and then just air guitar your own guitar and think about how the music makes you feel, and think about how you would like to express each note. Well, maybe not each note, but each of the important notes. At the end of a solo, how it makes you feel, or what kind of face it makes you want to make, or how you want to move, or anything really. Anything that involves movement. Also practice being able to play. You got to learn how to be able to play without looking at the guitar, how to be able to just feel it. Start off by looking at it. Try to figure out how, get so comfortable with it you don't have to look at the fretboard. And just a little hint is, if there's no position shifts, it's usually pretty easy to play without looking. So if there's a part that has no position shifts, that's an easy part to just practice. Obviously this isn't a real part. If that note made me really feel like that, but it doesn't. I'm just kind of emphasizing a point here, and that is to walk around the room while you play, and just be able to look expressive and look like the note is actually making you feel something. And you won't be able to do it all the time, but if Sin can jump around while he's doing the Afterlife solo nowadays, we can pretty much do anything. Look at Angus Young, look at all these other, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, how they move around and shit like that. There's some people that look a little bit more boring too when they play that are still considered great guitarists, and they're very famous, but you don't want to look like a fucking slave to the guitar the whole time while you're just staring at it. You want to be able to connect with the audience. You want to be able to do all that stuff, so you got to practice that too. So yeah, do that. So that's a lot of things to think about, and there's a lot, there's an infinite amount of knowledge that is out there for learning anything, and it can seem daunting at times, especially to newer people, of whatever it is they're doing, whatever mountain they're trying to climb. It seems like there's a lot to do, a lot to learn. Yes, there's a lot to learn and utilize and do every day. But what you got to do is it's just one step at a time. Focus on one thing at a time. Just focus on doing that one piece of technique that you keep fucking up on. Focus and get it down to as a simple idea as you can to yourself, and then do it over and over and over again. And if you just keep attempting each one of those little micro lessons, do them again. Do that other micro lesson here. You're not going to do them all at once. You're going to do each one individually, and you're going to, at the rate at which you can apply each one of those things, will improve over time. You'll see that, oh, maybe I was really bad at transitions, or I was really, really bad at finger rolling because of this one thing. This one idea was missing. This link was missing in my mind to my hand, because that's how you play. You think it first, and then you learn it, and then you can do it. It doesn't ever really start with the hand. It doesn't start with the hand. It starts with your mind and how you think about it, and how you impose your will on the guitar, because that's what guitarists do. They get their feelings in their head through the instrument. So yeah, I hope this helps you. I hope it helps everybody, because if I would have known these things when I first started learning, my technique would have gotten a lot better. And that, with the stuff that I needed to learn, I needed a lot of technique. So if you're looking for a lot of technique, I hope this helps you.